On today's show, the San Diego Padres shocked the baseball world by hiring Craig Stammen, and some of you guys, the listeners and the Padres faithful and the baseball people, divisive reactions to say the least, as well as some news on Albert Pujols and Fernando Tatis Jr. making a little bit of history.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Monday, November 10th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes the most, Javier Reyes, and I've been covering this team for 6 years now, not just for this podcast, but also various other outlets, including justbaseball.com, chief among them. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Go check that out. And hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning into today's show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. So shout out the homies at Podcast of Locked On World, because I'm a company man, so shout out to them. Today's episode, guys, we are going to react to a little bit of news regarding Fernando Tatis Jr. and Albert Pujols, the latter of which not necessarily happy news, the former of which very happy news, and then react to some of your reactions about Craig Stammen, because that's going to be the big thing we got to talk about for what is going to feel like the rest of the offseason in a lot of ways, right? Until we get some free agency signings, I think that's going to be the big news. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's first talk about the joyous news, right? And that actually... let's talk about Albert Pujols a little bit, because I like getting the sad a little bit out of the way. But everyone's been wondering, like, what was going on with Pujols, right? He had an 8.5-hour interview. He didn't get brought up, anything like that. You know, it was very weird. The Angels are refusing him, all these sort of things. Well, we might have a reason for why maybe Albert Pujols was refused by the Angels, and perhaps it, at least tangentially so, has something to do with the Padres' decision. Again, I don't want to overly speculate, but basically, in the Athletic article, for those who aren't familiar, there's the trial going on right now for Tyler Skaggs, Angels pitcher who had a drug death, basically, right? Like, he overdosed, and it's a really sad thing. Happened a few years back. Not even a few years back. This might have been years ago. This might be like before the pandemic, I believe, in 2020. Very, very sad story. And there's been investigations into it, what's going to go down. And Albert Pujols got brought up recently because it has been alleged, and you could go check out at SB Nation, Viva Alberto's kind of talked about this a little bit, but Sam Blum of The Athletic even said that Pujols kind of egged on, not Tyler Skaggs, but one of the people that was kind of supplying, unfortunately, the drugs that ended up taking Tyler Skaggs' life back in 2019 was the year. I don't want to get into too much. You can go look up the article, and I want to be very careful to say I'm not saying that Albert Pujols was a big part of this. He's the one that did this, but it is a little bit of a thing that might be the reason he doesn't get hired to be a manager anywhere, frankly, right? Like, if he was this kind of goes against what a lot of people think of when they think of Albert Pujols. And if this is what has been alleged and was talked about in the Athletic article, is partially that he was kind of egging on part of this and whatnot. So I don't know the extent. Again, very, very clear. I'm not trying to accuse Albert Pujols of anything, but I'm just saying that might have to do a little bit with perhaps why the Angels, which is the team that Tyler Skaggs was on, decided to pass, as well as potentially some other teams might be like, maybe we want to stay away from this. This is a really tragic story. Be careful if you look up this story, genuinely, because it's just so sad. I remember hearing about it, and it was awful. It was awful. I believe Tyler Skaggs pitched like a really good game too. It's such a sad story. But if you want more in-depth read, go check out the SB Nation article, especially because it's an actual Cardinals fan talking about Pujols from his perspective and the parts in the article that raised him. So just wanted to throw that out there, because Albert Pujols had been attached to the Padres job for what feels like months, but it was more like 3 weeks, right? But nonetheless, that is something bringing up. But not that there's ever a good transition, right? But just transition off of that. Let's talk about Tatis. Fernando Tatis Jr., Padres superstar. Guess what? He's a 2-time Platinum Glove winning player now. Announced the other day, on Friday to be exact. Both he and Bobby Witt Jr. were recipients of this year's Platinum Glove. For those who don't know, there are Gold Gloves that goes for the best at each position, allegedly, defensively. And then there's the Platinum Glove, which is the, in general, best defenders of both leagues. Now, we love this, of course. And this is his second platinum glove. And why I keep bringing up to everybody, that look, this is still a star level player. He was still top 10 in wins above replacement. His defense is amazing. And even if the offense stays the way it is, I stand by this. If this is just who Tatis is, a 6-win player, 5-6-win player with great defense, really good on base skills, and can occasionally be like awesome offensively, even if not the Ken Griffey Jr. type of offensive player that we might have thought he was going to be based on the beginning seasons of his career. That's a Hall of Fame player. And I stand by that. Genuinely a Hall of Fame player. But did he deserve this platinum glove win? I think is going to be a lot of people's questions. And look, he's deserving, certainly. But yes, there was potentially some other players that deserved it more, namely Pete Crow Armstrong, who I always just want to give a shout out to, like, someone who's like so much younger and just coming into the league. In a lot of ways, I understand that he's technically a rookie, right? Like last year he played in 123 games. I understand that, but he's still such a young guy, and this was kind of his breakout season, and I liked how great he was defensively, right? On top of his offense, he did have a good year, but Pete Armstrong was tied with Tatis in defensive runs saved, but completely outpaced him in outs above average, covering some of his range in the outfield, right? Tatis was 8 outs above average, which is exceptional. Don't get me wrong. But Pete Armstrong was almost historic with 21 in his outs above average category. Elite defender. There's also Nico Horner, who had more outs above average and more defensive run saves. Ke'Bryan Hayes, third baseman. Patrick Bailey of the Giants, who gets so much of his value from his defense at 19 defensive run saved and one of the best frame values that we've seen at the catching position in some time. So again, he's deserving of it. I think this is the classic case, and this isn't as bad as we've seen in the past with the Gold Glove, i.e. some famous examples, right? Like Derek Jeter winning the Gold Glove a bunch of times. Juan Soto being a nominee for the Gold Glove a few times, right? This isn't necessarily the award where the popularity value that you see that seeps in that ruins the Gold Glove's prestige. A lot of times where it's like, why is that guy? You just gave it to that person because they're popular, right? That is a little bit what happened here, I think. Tatis is a superstar. He's one of the 5-6 biggest, most famous players in the league, right? He's a super fun, electric player to watch, right? And I think he made his like home run robberies. Remember how he had like 6 of those this year, and they came at the right time. They came against big market teams. So I do think that there's like a sexiness to his defensive big moments, I think, right? Like robbing Mark Vientos or whoever it was of a home run. I was there for one of them at Petco Park in August, right, against the Mets. I think it was Mark Vientos, or maybe it was Lindor. I forgot who it was, but like it was amazing, right? He just had so many games. He had a few games that he straight up saved by robbing home runs. So I just think he had a few more moments, whereas Pete Armstrong's moments happened a little bit early on in the year and was a little bit more like you'd have to look it up. You'd have to follow the Cubs. So yeah, a little bit of the popularity bump and a little bit of his best catches happened at the right time where a lot of eyeballs were seeing them, at least in my opinion. And he had that stretch where it was like back-to-back games that he was robbing home runs, like in the same week. So that stuff sticks out to people. Those go viral on all your YouTube shorts and your TikToks and blah, 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 right? So that's a big part of it. But nonetheless, still a deserving player for it. And we love him. We love him very much. And it's this defensive excellence that I still think continues to be underrated, and I think why people need to calm down when they are trying to throw Tatis into the banishment zone for all of players and acting like he can no longer be a star anymore, because he absolutely and certainly is. But folks, let me take a second to talk to you about one of our sponsors, that is FanDuel. With the NBA back, there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Go and check it out. And just like that, everybody, we are back here thriving and vibing on the Locked On Padres podcast, despite it all. Now we got to get into the mailbag section. We got to talk a little bit more about Craig Stammen, who, again, I cannot emphasize enough, a very divisive, I think, signing for a lot of people, and for a lot of good reasons, because I think that Craig Stammen, it does remind people of some of Preller's worst habits, which is like, hey, remember, while I do have my issues with Mike Schill, I hated that Ryan O'Hearn, who you just acquired the deadline, who has been better the last 2 years than Luis Arraez. Why is Arraez still starting? And why is he starting in the number 2 spot? Why are you doing that? Why is Mason Miller not brought on to face the heart of the order? And instead you send him in against the 7, 8, 9 and all that, right? He was really stubborn with certain things. But the last 2 managers have been these old school style managers with a little bit more cachet and whatnot. And they weren't just league office extensions, at least as far as we know, old school guys. And in fairness, right? In fairness to those guys who, while I have some criticisms of them, the top 3 best seasons under AJ Preller, number 1, Mike Schilt last year in 2024. Number 2, Mike Schilt in 2025. And number 3, Bob Melvin in 2022 with 89 wins, right? So part of me is like, do we really want to go back to that area, right? Maybe he's learned something, right? So again, it's one of those things where I really genuinely am okay with either kind of opinion on this, if that makes sense, right? And let's get into some of your guys' reactions. First up, Rama Murdy 9938 says, I can say that I didn't have Craig Stammen becoming the next manager for our Padres. I wasn't too excited about Pujols as he hasn't managed except in the Dominican Winter League, which is another thing, by the way, to bring up, that all of these candidates really did have a lot of experience, which is kind of wild. But he continues to go on to say, I love how people immediately think that this is a bad hire and that AJ just picked someone who will answer to him. This hire, along with all the other hires, had to be approved by the whole ownership group. So this wasn't just AJ's pick, it was the entire organization's choice. While Stammen doesn't have managerial experience, he's only a few years removed from being a player. If he has the respect of the players in the clubhouse, then that is all we need to know. The fact he's been around the team in various roles is huge, as we have someone who has seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, and can bring ideas on how to fix things. We tried the experience route, so maybe trying something different will get us over the hump. Bringing Niebla and Ben Fritz back is huge. For those who don't know, that's the bullpen coach, is huge. Stammen needs a good bench coach he trusts, and we need a good hitting coach like Toronto's coach. Let's give Stammen a chance and root for him. See, totally, like, I'm totally fine with that, right? Like, I'm totally fine with the kind of positive note on this, right? Like, I really am with you, Rama, on that. We're like, you know what? We tried the experience route. That's a good point. The only thing I would argue what the fear is well, the experience route kind of worked, right, in some way. So we're going to see how it pans out. But I also agree with what you're saying about the front office, right? Like, there's a bunch of other people that have to say yes to this, including the ownership group. But then again, it's like, yeah, but it's still AJ. You know what I mean? It's still AJ that has the most power in this room and with this management group. So it's very hard to say. But I think that overall, we do have to give it a chance. I'm always going to be on board with that. And I like that you touched on recently being around the clubhouse. I think that's interesting that this is a guy who is going to be more familiar with the current culture of modern baseball, right? And what it's like for modern baseball players. You might be able to relate to them a little bit more as to some old school guys who have been like around before social, like, you know, Bob Melvin with the D-backs back when, you know, social media, you weren't getting things posted 24/7. So maybe you won't fully understand that. I don't know. Maybe I'm coping when I talk about this, but overall, I feel you on that. But not everybody felt the same. At Reno San 87. Now, of course, this is a troll, but he says another yes man for AJ to bully. LOL. This take is goofy AF with the fake hype for a former pitcher with no experience who used to play for the franchise and was mid at best. It's no surprise y'all been ringless since 1969, and this hire confirms it. Again, shocker, guys. This is probably a Dodgers fan, but I just like letting you guys know what I'm dealing with every now and then because it's so annoying. Like, what? You guys won the World Series. Why are you commenting on this channel? Such loser behavior. I'm sorry, it just is. But moving on to some others, at RSVJR619 says, I bet you didn't have Craig Stammen on your bingo card, Javi. What a bleep day. What a terrible day. I really had hope for the future. This is the most underwhelming news ever. 2026 is in the trash can already. You see what I mean? There was so many different reactions to this. And I think that all of them, to an extent, are pretty valid. Now, I don't think 2026 is in the trash can already because I still think that it's important to remember that this season also had a really bad omen heading into it, which was the fact that, you know, we had the lawsuit, right, with Shield Seither. We're going to see how that progresses potentially as time goes along in the Texas court. But you had that situation pop up. You had all the like allegations that were kind of thrown out of the lawsuit and all the drama there. Then you had the fact that they didn't get Roki Sasaki and he went to the Dodgers, this top tier who becomes a top 5 prospect. If you just like look at prospect rankings, he was like a top 5 prospect in baseball already. They didn't even need him and they acquired him. So there was a lot of bad vibes and look what happened. They still had a pretty good season, right? So don't give up in that regard. And remember, it's possible that it's just Tatis and Merrill versus the world next year. That's all they need for their offense, right? We're going to have to see. But again, it's not over yet. I would definitely disagree with that point. But there's more comments. We have at Arlo4511 who says, hire Pujols as the hitting coach and Mattingly as the bench coach. First of all, I don't know why I keep getting comments about Don Mattingly. Like, is this been a guy that the media's been talking about lately? Are the shows bringing him up? Because, I mean, he's fine. I just don't know if, like, I've heard, like this is, like, the dude that needs to be hired or anything like that. Whatever. And again, I talked about Pujols in the first segment. We'll see how that all plays out. But Pujols as hitting coach in a vacuum, yeah, that'd be kind of cool. Although something tells me Pujols would want to be head manager. That's probably why he's been interviewing for this. He is Albert Pujols overall. He has the cachet, the reputation and clout to be able to go for a position like that. But so far, not working out for him. And again, that Cardinals thing is it is worrisome. If he is potentially in any way has something to do with the Tyler Skaggs thing, right? Even if it's by proxy, it's just so sad. But anyway, moving on to more responses from this, because again, so many. At Oppenheim says, Oppenheim too says, AJ is building a family, so everyone is pulling in the same direction with enthusiasm. By the way, Stammen was also a great Fuel League pitcher, so likely prioritizes defense. I like Arise, which is my favorite part of this comment. You just snuck in I like Arise. Do you know, Oppenheim, that I'm not a biggest Arise fan? I don't know. But yeah, maybe he prioritizes defense. I don't know what he's going to prioritize. I don't know how he's going to work as a manager. I really don't. But I kind of respect the optimism, and I respect that there's a lot of people who have brought this up with me. It's why I bring it up on the show, which is the AJ Preller legacy and some of the decisions he's made, extending Bogaerts, or signing Bogaerts, extending Manny, or extending Darvish maybe, and Cronenworth when you didn't need to, right? Going out and signing international players people haven't heard of, and then giving Bogaerts a lot of money, and signing Hosmer in the first place is such a big deal when you had so many other things to do, right? I think that one of the possibilities here is that it's not easy to become a destination and get those first calls. We don't talk about this enough. Like, if you want to get your free agents, you got to be a little bit of an interesting destination and establish yourself as a serious organization that isn't just going to be the Rockies where they throw out money at Chris Bryant and then they vanish into the wind, right? Or any other teams that have paid some money to say what the Guardians did with Jose Ramirez, and then they're not paying anybody anymore. In fact, they're just trading people away, right? So AJ, maybe he went out of his way to be like, look, we've been a really irrelevant franchise. This is not a team that everybody's going to be like, oh, wow, the Padres are calling me, right? So instead, I want to establish it by making a culture. We're never going to go to arbitration with our players. We're going to extend players pretty quickly. That is possible. And maybe the Stammen hire is like, I want to be like that. I want to start establishing a culture with this organization that has very far often over the majority of its existence not really had one. So I totally understand that. But again, we're going to have to see. At M. Castleberry 1980 says, as long as he can manage a bullpen and adjust the lineup, I'll be happy. The guys that play with him all like and respect him. Now let's see who ends up the hitting coach. Again, yeah, the hitting coach is going to be a big deal. They need to surround Craig Stammen with like a real nice hire. Like, get someone in there that you're like, oh yeah, that guy was really good. Hopkins gets brought up all the time. I don't think Toronto's letting him go. But again, someone who has like a really, really good reputation, I think, or at least was part of a team that did really well successfully, especially for maybe more than 1 year on the offensive side of things, I think would be really, really huge for this team. I really do. And we're gonna have to see how it pans out, because this is one of those hirings where if it doesn't go well, and the team like falls apart, especially in ways that you don't expect, you start seeing mistakes, maybe fundamental mistakes. You start, if the hitting is somehow worse and they slug worse this year, then yeah, you might have a lot of people be like, why the heck did they bring this rookie manager on who was only with the team back in like 2020, right? It hasn't been that long. So I understand a lot of the naysayers, and I understand the optimism too. It's not easy to find the right manager in baseball, man. It's just not. But folks, you know what else isn't easy? Buying tickets. And with the NFL back, there's nothing better, obviously, than being in the stadium surrounded by fans and cheering on your team, being part of that community. But again, it can be frustrating, right? The ticket prices jump at checkout, the login screens, the queues. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I love their zone deals option. You pick a section of the stadium, they pick the seat for you in that section, you get a discount. The prices can go down faster to the game, so if your plans change, you've got that going for you. So go check it out. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. And just like that, everybody, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing into the final segment where we're going to continue to answer some of your questions and preview the rest of the week, what we got on the schedule. But let's react to Cam Wordplay had a lot to say about our guy, Craig Stammen. He says, yo, Javi, your intro teaser was spot on. I basically said, what? When he got hired. That was basically my take. And you perfectly captured the mood in the room of excitement and relief upon seeing the puff of smoke come from the first base dugout of Petco Park, combined with the other shock of who was chosen. For those who don't know, this is a reference to how they choose the Pope and the white smoke and all that. Well done. I loved that movie with Ralph Fiennes. I'm blanking on it. I don't know why I'm blanking out on the name. This is embarrassing, but go check out that movie. Great music. Really, really good movie. But anyway, since stampeding Stammen's name was not even mentioned among internal candidates like Mark Loretta, we were all scratching our heads. And even if his name did get discovered as the mystery finalist, it's safe to say most fans would have put him as a distant fourth in their picks among Albert Pujols, Ruben Abel, and Nick Hundley. I was about to disagree with fourth behind Hundley, but you're probably right. I think fans would have been like, all right, well, let's take him at least, but we'll see. One thing is for sure, though, AJ thinks long and hard about all of his moves and does a ton of research. So while I trust that he did his due diligence in choosing someone who will be respected by the players and the media and will create a positive dugout, clubhouse, and front office environment, I have to say that AJ has not exactly had the Midas touch when it comes to hiring managers, with or without experience, making trades and signing free agents. He has been successful to the point of creating teams that compete well and reach the playoffs, but after 10 to 12 seasons, he has not yet given San Diego a taste of the World Series, let alone a home playoff game in 2025. And the team certainly has a lot of question marks going into 2026 and beyond, not at least of which is Stammen's lack of managerial experience. So whether the hiring will work, as well as a reliever striking out the side in the ninth inning or giving up 4 home runs, is anybody's guess. I wish Mr. Stammen the best and believe that retaining Niebla gets him off to a very good start. But with the dragon to the north likely be even stronger and more frightening next year, if I am the Padres upper management, I would be very conservative in the extension I offer to AJ. If he doesn't get this one right, it's time for him to go. This is so well said, man. Like, I agree with basically everything. I will say that it's a little, you got to be careful not to imply, I don't necessarily think if this is what you meant, that like it's World Series or bust, because it is important to remember this is the Padres, not the Yankees, right? This is a team trying to establish itself as even being a legitimate contender, first of all. And they've made the playoffs 4 out of the last 6 years. And they have the Dodgers to deal with, right? There are other teams in other divisions that could do what the Padres are doing, and they don't have a super team Avengers that they're trying to beat, right? No Dodgers fan will ever give the Padres respect for it, but if the Dodgers were in another division, those teams would not even attempt to even begin to think about trying, right? So the Padres deserve some credit for at least trying to beat the Dodgers, and sometimes they've been successful, but most often not. We're hoping to swap that, right? But we'll have to see. But I think that you make a great point that, yeah, if this is another disaster, maybe it is time to think about AJ. I think we are on year 6 of me doing this pod, and it is still a fascinating topic where I really can get every opinion, man, about AJ Preller. I love him from the perspective of he is undoubtedly super exciting for this franchise as it's changed the Padres, but has he been overall effective? And could you have built this team a different way and perhaps a better way? That's where the debate comes in. So I totally get what you're saying, man. But I also think I really like that you brought up, like, hey, he's hired a lot of managers, and the managers that have been inexperienced ones that were first time have not worked out. From our guy Andy Green to Jace Tingler, right? Those guys did not work, and that is absolutely something that is worth bringing up. So we'll have to see. And man, some of those were really tough sometimes. But more reactions to it. At Phoenix Ash 927 says, "Is he a puppet for Preller? This isn't even a question. Preller didn't like any of his finalists, so he put a yes man in instead." The problem with AJ from the early 2020s was that he was micromanaging managers who didn't want that kind of interference. Stammen, I have to believe, has been conditioned to do what he is told ever since retiring. So essentially, AJ is going to spend the next 2 years as the Padres GM and manager, and it will either work or likely be the end of the line for him. it will be interesting. There have been some massively successful head coach and GM guys in football, so maybe this works. Bottom line for me, this is really weird, but I don't hate it. I'll save the hate for if it doesn't work out. LOL. Yeah, I totally get that too, man. Like it's just, that's where we are. We don't know. The kind of, and maybe this is mental gymnastics on my part, and I'm like, trying to contort my way in a way that makes me say that the hiring was good. That part of me is like, maybe he's learned since having two experienced managers that worked, that he's like, okay, but I know what I'm looking for now, potentially. And maybe he's like me and was tired of seeing Luis Reyes, bat number 2 on a playoff team, which I think is, I'm not going to stop bringing that up. I'm just not. Until Luis Reyes is officially not a Padre, I'm not going to stop bringing up that it is actually baseball malpractice to just have Tatis always getting a walk and then having a guy that's going to take 2 strikes down the middle, except for like the last 2 weeks of the season when he started to finally look like he was making some adjustments at the plate. But for the most part, my God, really frustrating stuff there. We'll have to see. And is he yes man? Probably. That's where I kind of lead to it. But again, some people disagree. Some people think that he, maybe it'll be okay. At Wait Wars Canada 325 says, do you, oh wait, no, let me save that question actually. At Aaron Naraga, I don't know how to say this. Aaron Nariga, 2384 says, not happy with the hiring. We need someone with more experience and someone who knows how to control Manny Machado. Look, I don't know the Manny Machado stuff. I want to be careful not to assume that this guy's like a clubhouse diva, but I also get that we have seen some not great moments of him before, right? Namely, I think the article from Kevin Acee where he sat down with him for 30 minutes and he infamously dropped the line of like, look, these are grown men. Like, what is this, college? Basically, like, I don't have to get them motivated. And that's true. You don't have to, but still, just having that presence is still important. It's one of those things that, yeah, you don't have to do it, but it's also something that should be encouraged, I think, oftentimes, is to be a nice leader for the clubhouse. But at the same time, I don't want to get fully on him because I don't know fully if he's a good leader behind the scenes, and we just don't know. I will say that it don't get written about him nearly as much if it does happen as it did with Eric Hosmer, right? And Eric Hosmer was annoying because he would go 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts and make an error in the field, and then you get a post-game presser that's like, yeah, but he's so great in the locker room. It's like, bruh. That's why Padres fans couldn't stand him. It was media related too, I think, in a lot of ways. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Another comment, though, from at Silas Robert Shaw 8122 says, Stammen was a solid reliever who had a couple of really good seasons here. I don't know how he got his job, however. This is absolutely wild. Maybe this works, and I will root for him to be a stud, but it feels like we are going back down the road so often tread since we kicked Bud Black out. I get it, man. I get it. I really do. I understand your point. And I really appreciate, by the way, a lot of your comments on this week's episode, guys. I'm going to respond to more in the coming days about, I imagine, Craig Stammen. But let me end with a couple of fun questions that we got. First of all, at the Kershaw Curse says, question, Padres have a list of problems going to 2026, right? How many of those problems does this hiring solve? Correct answer, 0. And once again, Kershaw Curse, the one who, by the way, I believe this is the commenter that said, Profar is bad because he pranked the fans. It's still one of the funniest things I've read from anybody. And number 2, you guys won the World Series. Why are you here? Why are you here? You're such a loser. It's like, why? We don't care about you guys. You guys are so nothing. We just love commenting on all of your guys' media whenever something goes wrong. And also, for the record, in a technical sense, no manager hiring fixes the big problems that you have in terms of roster. What are you talking about? Stop pushing the idea that the reason the Padres are bad and the Dodgers are good is because they signed Dave Roberts and we didn't. No, it's the $2 billion you spent over 2 years, as well as some really good farm system play, especially in, I think, the majority of the 2010s and some of the early 2020s. But nowadays, no, you guys just brought on the Avengers. That's why you won. That's what you should do. Don't get me wrong, but let's stop acting like Dave Roberts is the reason. Last comment that I want to go into, at Weight Wars Canada 325 says, do you think the Padres should change the colors of the uniforms? Go back to navy blue and get rid of the brown? I love this question. First of all, no, the brown and yellow and gold, whatever you want to say, they're awesome. I love them very much. The away uniforms are great. The home uniforms are great. I can't wait to see what the new City Connects, I believe that might be debuted next year. This was the last year of the Taco Bell looking City Connects. So we'll see how those go. I will say though, I am very liberal with uniforms. I like almost every type of weird uniform, but I am more so with baseball. I wouldn't mind if just like one weekend they brought the blue and navy back. It's 162 games. I could deal with the colors being a little bit different every now and then, but that's just me. But as a normal base, no, way too generic. And especially when you have the brown and gold and all the different ones they have there, you keep what you've been doing, right? It's come on, let's be real. But everybody, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from and leave some comments in the YouTube comment section below to get featured on this show. For the rest of this week, tomorrow is the podcast that was supposed to come out on Friday, but the Craig Stammen news came out. That is with my guy, Paul Holden. A little fun beginning to free agency, talking about like who we think is the biggest bargain, who we think is a trap and people don't want to go for, who we didn't even realize was a free agent. Fun episode. Wednesday, going to get into more of your mailbag questions and comments and probably some more about Craig Stammen. So that'll be a lot of fun. We've also got player reviews for Gavin Sheets coming out. We've got player reviews for the rest of the Padres bench as a whole. We've got some stuff on the catching situation. We've got best and worst moments of 2025 all on the horizon. And you might see a different background behind me for some of those episodes. It's because I'm going to be away for a week or so. It might be a virtual background or a different thing, just as a heads up for you guys out there. But nonetheless, the content will arrive. And with that all being said, guys, that about does it again for today's episode. And until next time, stay safe and of course, stay faithful. My Friday faithful homies, take care.